So what is a figure of speech? A figure of speech is a figurative language. That is, a language which is used to draw picture mentally to convey a message or idea much quicker, effective and vividly. We have already learned figurative and literal language in our previous video with tons of examples. Please watch that video if you haven't already or need a revision after this video. Links for that are in the description. In English, there are many figures of speech, out of which we are going to learn 7 most commonly used figures of speech. First, simile, second, metaphor, third, personification, fourth, hyperbole, fifth, apostrophe, sixth, oxymoron, and seventh, onomatopoeia. I will give you a trick to remember the names of these 7 figures of speech at the end of this video. So let's get started with the most common one, simile. A simile is a figure of speech that uses comparison between two unlike things. It is done using words like, as, or so. These two things must have one thing in common. Let's understand simile with some examples. Our soldiers are as brave as a lion. Here we are comparing two different things, soldier and lion, using a word as. And what is one thing that is common between both of them? It is their bravery. They both are known for their bravery. So here, as brave as a lion is a simile. Let's look into another example. She is like an angel. Here, a girl is compared with an angel using the word like. And the common thing between them is beauty of both of them. So here, like an angel is a simile. Let's look into one more example to make things even clear. Love is patient and so is my mother. Here, love is compared with my mother using the word so, and the common thing between them is patience. So here, so is my mother is a simile. These are the examples of simile. Now let's look into the next type of figure of speech, metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that uses comparison between two unlike things. These two things must have one thing in common. Now you might be thinking, in simile also we said the same thing. But there is a difference between both of them. While in simile, we use words as, so or like while comparing two things, here we do not use that. Let's look into a previous example of simile and try to convert it into a metaphor. Our soldiers are as brave as a lion. Removing as brave as, it becomes our soldiers are lion. In this statement also, our soldier is compared with lion and the common thing between them is bravery of both of them. But we have not used the word as. Thus, we can say in the statement, our soldiers are as brave as a lion, we used a simile. But when we say our soldiers are lion, we use a metaphor. Let's look into some more example of metaphor. The camel is the ship of the desert. Here, the comparison between camel and ship is made by saying that they both are equal without using any comparison word. So this is a metaphor. Let's look into one more example of metaphor. Life is a dream. Here comparison between life and dream is made by saying that they both are equal without using any comparison word. So these are the examples of metaphor. Let's look into the next type of figure of speech, personification. Personification is a figure of speech where human qualities are given to objects or ideas. These qualities may be emotions, desires, sensations, gestures, and speech. Let's look into some sentence example of personification. The sun smiled at us. Here we are giving a quality of human which is smile to an object sun. So personification is used here. Let's look into next example. The stars danced playfully in the moonlight sky. Here we are giving human quality of dancing to stars, so it is a personification. Let's look into one more example of personification. Opportunity was knocking at her door. Here we are giving a human quality of knocking to an abstract term opportunity. So personification is used here. Let's look into next type of figure of speech, hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech wherein we exaggerate or overstate any statement. It is done for expressing something forcibly and clearly. Let's look into examples of hyperbole. The river of blood flooded in the battlefield. Here, to make the readers understand that there was too much of bloodshed in the battlefield, we exaggerated the situation or overstated it by saying that river full of blood was flooded. So this statement is a hyperbole. Let's look into some more examples of hyperbole. You are brighter than the shiniest star. Here, we are overstating someone's beauty by telling that it is brighter than the brightest star. So it's a hyperbole. Let's look into one more example of hyperbole. Her brain is the size of a pea. Here we are overstating her mind's functionality by telling that it is just the size of a pea. So it's a hyperbole. Let's look into the next type of figure of speech. Apostrophe. An apostrophe is a figure of speech in which some absent or non-existent person or thing is addressed as if present and capable of understanding. It is an exclamatory figure of speech as exclamation is used in it. Let's look into some examples of them. Life, I cannot understand you. Here, we are talking with life as if it is a living object and is capable of understanding us. Also notice the exclamation mark after life. Let's look into the next example of why don't you ever work, you stupid computer? Here we are talking with a computer as if it is a living object and is capable of understanding us. Notice the exclamation mark after computer. Let's look into one more example of hyperbole to make things even clear. Blow winds blow. Here we are talking with wind as if it is a living object and it is capable of understanding us. Here also you can notice the exclamation mark after blow. So these are the examples. Let's look into the next type of figure of speech. Oxymoron. An oxymoron is a figure of speech containing words that seem to contradict each other. That is, one word says one thing and the other word says another thing. Oxymorons are extremely useful in written English because they can make effective titles, add dramatic effects, add flavors to speech, and can sometimes be used to achieve a comedic effect. Let's look into some examples of them. It is an open secret. Here you can see two opposite words used in the same sentence, open and secret. If it is a secret, then it cannot be open, and if it is an open, then it cannot be a secret. So it is an oxymoron. Let's look into the next example of oxymoron. All the politicians agreed to disagree. Here you can see two opposite words agree and disagree in the same sentence. So it is a oxymoron. Let's look into one more example of oxymoron. He is clearly confused in his decision. Here you can see two opposite words clearly and confused in the same sentence. So it is a oxymoron. So these are the examples of oxymoron. Let's look into the last type of figure of speech that we will be learning today. Onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia is defined as a word which imitates the natural sounds of a thing. That is, it is a word which is the sound of that thing. Let's understand it with some example. The buzzing bee flew away. What is the sound of bee? It is buzz. As in this statement, we are using the sound of bee buzzing. It is onomatopoeia. Let's look into the next example of onomatopoeia. The large dog said bow wow. Now what is the sound of a dog? It is bow wow. As in this statement, we are using the sound of dog. It is onomatopoeia. Let's look into one more example of onomatopoeia. The snake slithered and hissed. Now what is the sound of snake? It is hiss. As in this statement, we are using the sound of snake. It is onomatopoeia. So these are the examples of onomatopoeia. Let's quickly revise what we learned in this lesson. Firstly, we learned what is a figure of speech. A figure of speech is a figurative language, that is a language which is used to draw a picture mentally to convey a message or idea much quicker, effective and vividly. Then we discussed the 7 types of figure of speech. First one was simile. A simile is a figure of speech that uses comparison between two unlike things done using like, as or so these things must have one thing in common. Second, metaphor. A metaphor is a figure of speech that uses comparison between two unlike things. These two things must have one thing in common, but it is done without using the words like, as, or so. Third, personification. Personification is a figure of speech where human qualities are given to objects or ideas. These qualities may be emotions, desires, sensations, gestures, and speech. Fourth, hyperbole. Hyperbole is a figure of speech wherein we exaggerate or overstate any statement. It is done for expressing something forcibly and clearly. Fifth, apostrophe. An apostrophe is a figure of speech in which some absent or non-existent person or thing is addressed as if it was present and capable of understanding. Sixth, oxymoron. Oxymoron is a figure of speech containing words that seem to contradict each other. That is, one word say one thing and the other word say another thing. And seventh, onomatopoeia. An onomatopoeia is defined as a word which imitates the natural sounds of a thing. That is